Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the Figma Metal Gear Solid 2 Solid Snake figure, one that I've been excited about for a long time, and I think a lot of other people have also. Let's take a quick look at the packaging. Standard Figma style packaging, so we get the window box front with the kind of olive drab green colored part, so you can be on the lookout for that if you are. Number 243 says Solid Snake MGS V2 right across the bottom, Metal Gear logo. Some character artwork, some posing options, more character artwork. There you go. That's the packaging. Let's give him a height measurement and then we'll look at the accessories. He stands at just over 6 inches tall, so that makes him usable in theory with other 6-inch scale figures. Probably slightly short, but you could probably make it work. Just about 15.5 centimeters. As far as accessories go, the first one I want to talk about is his face. This face comes off. This one has posable eyes. We'll talk about that later. This one is interchangeable. This one does not have posable eyes. They are just painted on. But you can't really tell that there's a difference just from looking at them. It's how good they did with the posable eyes and the paint. Then he also has interchangeable hands, of course. So we have the 2 fist hands. We have a tree of 8 hands. So 2 style pose hands, 2 gripping hands, 2 loose hands, which have an alternate purpose. If you see, there's a little hole between the 2 fingers on either one, and that's because he comes with some cigarettes. They look like they're lit. They have a little orange and gray paint on there, so that's kind of cool. Then we have a secondary rifle hand or pistol hand, a trigger finger hand with the finger off the trigger. We get a hand that has the finger on the trigger. Be careful putting the gun in this hand, by the way. These fingers are actually not very flexible at all. And then lastly, hand-wise, we have these 2 wall climbing or ledge hanging hands. So they have little tabs on there, and what you do is you set this on the surface, this little clear piece of acrylic, and then these holes are not actually going to be tabbed into, but they will catch and hold him in place. So it'll keep him from falling, most likely, but use caution, of course. Instructions tell you to do so also. It comes with the standard Figma display stage, as is the usual, and it has the little extension tab on here for alternate poseability, so that's good. He comes with a rifle. Not a whole lot of detail in this rifle, which in real life they don't have a whole lot of variation in color, so I guess that's okay. But it has a nice gunmetal finish on it, so that's okay. Lots of sculpted detail. And he comes with his pistol, with the silencer. Pretty cool. He comes with a muzzle flash effect, which I know works for the rifle. I haven't tried it for the pistol, but that just goes right there. Be careful when you're putting it on so you don't bend the barrel. It's kind of a big muzzle flash, but I suppose it's supposed to be a little bit like in the game where it's a little probably accented or augmented, but it looks cool with the white and yellow paint. Let's see if it goes on the pistol. You really shouldn't have a muzzle flash on a pistol with a silencer like this, at least not very much of one, and it doesn't really fit, so that's probably intentional. We get this, which is just to help us pose the eyes, which I guess I can show you right now. So for this, you want to pop the top of the head off, pull the face off, and now you have access to the eyeballs. Put that in there, look at it from the front, and you can move the eyes around. So now he's looking to the side. Let's see if I can do this from this side. So he's looking off to his left, our right, or you can move the eye the other way. They did a really good job with his eyes, by the way. They look painted on till you move them. Really, really well done. So that's cool. And then you just swap out the faces by putting the other head on instead. So no big deal there. And then the last accessory, of course he does come with the little Ziploc baggie, but the last accessory is his cardboard box, which you have to fold yourself. But I'm sure you guys can all figure that out. I'm not going to fold mine yet because I'm not going to put it on display yet, so I'm going to keep it in the package. But they did a really good job printing that and making it look good. So that's pretty awesome. So lots of accessories. I'm really impressed with this Figma, guys. They did a good job for being a mostly monochromatic figure, other than some variations in color. He looks really good. There's lots of shading, paint detail. All of the silver parts look really nice. And then we do have the different tones of blue, like in the elbows and knees. Very, very sharp looking figure. They did a pretty good job with it. I'm really happy. I know some people are like really not into it. I'm not a huge Metal Gear fan, to be honest, so I'm not biased at all, and I really like it. There are some questionable design choices, but overall it's really solid. Let's start at the top. The bandana is on a ball peg, so you can move that around, spin that around. Be careful though, it feels kind of fragile and it might get stuck, so make sure you're actually turning it up at the ball joint and don't just rip it off. That would be not good. One thing I want to point out, let's pull the hair back off. For those of you that are really into poseability, his hair has a hinge on it so that it doesn't get in the way when you lean the head back. So that's pretty good. And then these two are just soft pieces that are glued on. So they don't have a hinge, but they won't get in the way. So that's pretty good. You can't tell it's like that until you pull it apart, but it is like that. So I appreciate it. You can kind of see the hinge in there, but not too much. So the head articulation, well, let's take it off again so I can show you up close. The head articulation is a standard Figma ball hinge. It looks like it's a peg in one end and, is it a ball? Maybe it's a double peg. I think it's a ball hinge with pegs on both ends. But you should be able to get all the poseability you want out of that. The neck is on the same type of joint, so you can move the neck around a whole bunch also. Really functional. One thing about Figmas is they have generally functional articulation. So you can make the head look down, make him look up. It does have a gap there when he looks up if you go all the way up. But still pretty excuse me, pretty functional. Happy about that. Shoulders are kind of a new design. It's a combination of the old design with kind of like the hip design actually. So we have the ball peg ball hinge, and this time we have the ball peg on this end and a straight peg going in that way. So it rotates around on the straight peg that way. The ball peg rotates around on that clip, which also rotates around in the shoulder. So that lets that move around like that. And it's normally just a straight peg going into the arm and a ball peg going into that. That reverse socket kind of gives some extra range of motion. You can bring the arm across the chest much more easily, and then you can put them in a lot more poses. So it will look awkward in some angles, but once you get in pose, you should be able to make it look pretty normal. And I think that's a really good thing. Like right there, you can't tell that the shoulder doesn't look right. So it will look weird in some poses if you're not careful. But for the most part, it's really functional, so I'm super happy with that. This is easily the best poseability I've had with a figure that holds a rifle ever. You can put it in his body, in his hands, perfectly naturally. It looks absolutely great with the guns. And I'll post some photos here at the end so that you can see what he looks like. But for now, take my word for it, the shoulders, though they're a little strange and can look weird, they are super functional and mostly look okay. For the elbow joint, we have a ball peg that goes into the upper, or into the bicep, into the upper arm, which lets that move around a little bit, rotate around. We get the hinge right there, and then it's just a straight peg into the forearm. Now if you look at this side, it's pretty seamless. The straight peg goes right in. We do get the elbow pad that sticks out, but it's not so bad. Now this one, the peg goes in at a pretty severe angle, so we get a much bigger gap. For some reason, I don't know if mine's a mismold. If you guys have the same issues, let me know with yours. The peg goes in at an angle here rather than going more straight. So it's a little off. It's a bigger gap in that elbow than I would prefer. But it's not horrible. And if it's a common issue, that's no good. But if it's just mine, then hopefully I can get it fixed. And then we have the standard ball hinge for the wrist. For the torso, it's a completely new design. Instead of just the single joint like we have in the neck, we have kind of like a mixture of joints. So we have that socket in there again with a double ball peg, and then the other socket going the other way up here. It's not bad. I'm not sure if it's entirely more functional than the standard articulation. So it looks really good like that, obviously. Then you can lean them forward. It doesn't lean that far forward, so I'm not sure it really helps there. It can lean back a good bit, but then you end up with a gap. So it kind of just lets you, let me put it back together, that would help. It kind of just lets you extend it a little bit for some poseability, but you can do that pretty much anyway, so I'm not sure it's better. It's definitely different. It's not bad, but I don't know if it's actually better. That's going to be, I guess, up to each individual person, but for me it seems about the same functionality as the standard joint. I would prefer just a straight double ball peg, I think, but either way, it's fine. These ammo pouches are on little ball pegs like the bandana, so they can move out of the way if you need them to. So that's pretty cool. The lower torso is on just a standard ball peg going into the torso. This time it's extendable though, so it stays like that. But if you need a little more hip movement, you can pop this up like that, and you can move the hips even more. It does get a little bit loose like that, so it's definitely for like a crouching pose, but it's not loose at all when it's normal. So I think that's just fine, and it rotates and leans, and this soft crotch piece works really well. For the hips, they're pretty much standard Figma hips. It's the three-way ball peg going into the torso and then into each hip. You can see the socket in there that moves around the ball peg, and then the thigh moves around that. and we get a thigh swivel down here, so you can really pose the legs however you want to, and it's going to look really good, and it's going to work really well. The knee is a standard Figma knee, but they did a pretty good job of making it seamless. It doesn't look nearly as bad as some of the other ones, and I think it's just fine. It's perfectly acceptable. For the ankles, we have a basic Figma ankle joint, just a standard disc hinge. So that gives pretty good range of motion forward and back. You do get to use the ankle rocker. You're going to have to kind of finagle it a little bit. Right now it doesn't want to stay, but you can get it to do the ankle rocker. And then we have a nice toe hinge also. So really nicely done for the articulation. The sculpt looks really good. Paints are really good. Poseability is really good. I'm super pleased with the figure. Some things are a little strange, but not strange enough that it's a problem, so I definitely recommend it 100%. These did just come in stock at Big Bad Toy Store, so click the link in the description below and order yourself one, because once these guys sell out, unless they reissue them, I have a feeling he's going to be worth a fortune. This is probably the most popular version of Snake, and it's a really, really good figure. So go get yourself one, and stick around for the photos at the end, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.